the things that happen while I'm in the middle of playing are where the story gets told.
Hello and welcome to the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players. I'm your host, David Holloway, and I'm thrilled as always to be here with you. And my brilliant mellifluous, which is the word I used in episode 72 to describe Paul Bindig, still applies. How are you, Paul?
I'm mellifluous as ever, I hope. How are you,
are.
David?
Good. And the reason I use that word again from episode 72 is we've got the brilliant Mitch Towne back with us. We reached out to Mitch because he's been a heavy user of the recently released Viscount Legend One. Plus, we're aware that Mitch has sort of had an interesting couple of years since we've talked to him. So we jumped at the chance to have another chat with him. So I think you'll get a lot out of this, whether you are interested in organ playing or otherwise. But particularly if you're interested, Paul, I reckon in purchasing a Legend One, there's lots of detail covered.
Yeah, Mitch goes into quite some depth about it, which is really welcome, to be honest, when you have a power user to describe a keyboard. So I won't ruin any of the surprise, David. We'll just roll into that and look forward to hearing your thoughts, viewers and listeners, after you've heard it.
Exactly. Here we go. Mitch, sir, it's an absolute pleasure to have you back. I looked through the archives, the very esteemed Keyboard Chronicle archives, and it was episode 72 we had the pleasure of speaking with you, so it's so lovely to see you again.
Great to be back. You guys have had a run. The people you've had on this show are incredible. I'm just very honored to be one of the people on the list.
No, very deservedly so. And we're really excited to talk to you because before we jump into the Legend One, which we will be getting to in some depth, but we do want to sort of recap with you because it has been a while. You've had quite the couple of years. Last time we spoke with you, you were sort of just about to go out on the road. And tell us how that went. And then I know you've got an upcoming album. Sort of give us a potted history of Mitch Towne over the last 18 months.
Well, I think I talked to you just as SRT was getting off the ground, and we had an amazing run in that year. We toured Japan. We hit the Billboard Live clubs in Osaka, Yokohama, and Tokyo, and that was life-changing, because I'd never been there. I'd always wanted to go to Japan, and all of my musician friends had said they're going to treat you like a rock star. And I'll tell you what, they were not exaggerating. This will give you a good example of how different it is, how different they view culture and art there is. We would play these beautiful clubs called Billboard Live. And so we would do 2 sets and then we do an autograph line, and the audiences were all so knowledgeable and would ask these really pointed questions, and it was just fabulous. So then we would gather up our stuff and our handler would lead us through the back of the club out to the van, and the entire staff, including the kitchen staff of the club, would line up and clap for you as you walked out. And we're so jaded. Andrew, the guitar player in SRT, turns to me and he goes, "Are they being serious? Or are they making fun of us?" I was like, "No, I think they're serious." But that's the difference of how artists are treated, other countries. And we just had a wonderful time. I think the big highlight of that one for me was our album was put out by a Japanese label called P-Vine the week before we went there. And so they told us, they said, when you're in Tokyo, go to Tower Records. They still have Tower Records. Tower Records is long gone in the United States, but they had like a 3 or 4 floor Tower Records. And we went to the jazz floor, not the jazz section, guys, the jazz floor. And there was a display of us, of our record and our faces. And so here I am walking into a record store in Tokyo and there's my face. You know what I mean? It was just one of those like, wow, And so that was a great tour. And then later that summer, we toured the East Coast. We did a week at Birdland. We were joined by the legendary Tom Scott on saxophone, who is the saxophone player on a bazillion songs, hits, everybody from Michael Jackson to Joni Mitchell to George Harrison to, Toto to everything, to Steely Dan. He arranged the horns for Steely Dan, so it was really a great time for me to get to be with guys like him, guys like JR, and to be able to say, okay, what was it like to work with Steely Dan? And then Tom tells you the stories, of what it's like. And so it was really wonderful. And so that was great. And like you said, I just put out my first album as a leader. And it's called Refuge, and it's 7 tunes, 6 of my compositions, and it was really kind of what I wanted to kind of show what my view of where the Hammond organ falls into jazz. It's a little more modern, but still I think accessible. And I'm just really excited about that, and that just came out. It's getting some nice reviews, and I'm just really grateful for that.
And I apologise, Mitch. I was thinking it was still coming out because I haven't listened to it yet, but I certainly will be. I didn't realise it was already out.
It's everywhere. You can find it on all the normal places. Yeah.
So no, looking forward to that. And SRT likely to go out on the road again. Other plans?
Yep, I think we'll be doing some stuff. I was just at the the famous Baked Potato with Andrew and a couple other guys. So I've got a lot of things going on. I might have a couple other things I can't talk about yet happening. So, but I'm having a good time.
Great. And look, in any keyboards player's life, all you can ask for is some great gigs and some great gear. And I think it's fair to say, as an attempted segue, the Viscount Legend One has taken your fancy. So let's dive into that a little bit. And then I thought we might get you to do a little bit of a comparison to some of the other clone wheels as well. But
it's probably a good idea to say up front that I've recently become a Viscount endorsing artist. So
okay.
Everybody can take however much grain of salt, with what I have to say. But I will say that I did become that after I bought my own keyboard. They haven't given me anything. I paid full price for this. And once I played it and once I heard it, that's when I was in contact with them and saying, guys, this thing is off the chain.
Just to keep Mitch honest, which no one needs to keep him honest because he inherently is, but I own one as well. But as I was saying to Mitch before the show, I've spent all of half an hour with it due to some work commitments. So I'm devastated to say I haven't played with it to any extent that Mitch does, let alone the fact that I can only play a tenth as well. So, but yeah, we'll certainly, we're not going to have hyperbole about the Viscount Legend One. It's just really talking about what we do like about it, and definitely no sponsorship involved. Yeah.
Yeah. And thank you for that disclosure, Mitch. But anyone who has read anything Mitch has written, you will know he takes this stuff very, very seriously and gives an honest, professional, considered opinion. So we're delighted to have you on the show to discuss this
great
keyboard.
to be here.
And David, look, I was disappointed. I was really hoping because, as David has just said, he also owns a Legend One. I was hoping we'd have a keyboard shootout today, you and Mitch trading off chops.
Oh, yeah. As if I was ever going to agree to that. So, yeah, Mitch, probably the best place to jump in is just your overview of the Legend One and what your initial thoughts were when you did play it for, say, the first half hour to an hour.
Well, so if anyone's not totally familiar with what the Legend One is, it is what I kind of refer to as a Swiss Army knife keyboard. The keyboards that fall into that category are definitely the Nord Electro, which is the granddaddy of those Swiss Army knives. The Yamaha YC Series, the YC 61, it would be comparable to the Legend One. They, and each one of them, I think, sort of has a strength. For instance, I think out of, say, those three, let's compare those three because they are dedicated clones, obviously, but these three keyboards are trying to sort of occupy the same space, right? And I think what I would say, if I could get the best of all three of them together, the Nord would have the best piano. The Nords are known for their pianos. Their pianos are sensational and they're great in the electro because they're the same as the ones that are in the stage and and I think that the electric pianos in the CP or in the YC 61 in the Yamaha, those are really good. I like those the best out of those three. But the Legend One, for me, being primarily an organ player, it's all about the organ. The organ in it, and I have played everything. Okay, going all the way back to my first clone was Voce made a box. It was a preset box. It was called the Micro B, and you could just dial in various drawbar settings, and it was really good for its time. So I have really used everything and tried everything since. So I've made it a point. It's like whenever there's something new, I got to try it. I got to buy it. I got to play it.
And just to interrupt, Mitch, too, you've also got massive credibility in the original. So I can't remember whether it's you, but I believe you have a number of B3s around the house. So you've obviously
I've
got huge
actually got,
credibility.
you know what? The last time we talked, I think I told you I had 8 different Hammonds of various vintages. But since then, I'm down to about 5,
Good
so it's
work.
like I finally, yeah, I'm trying to spread the love around, I shouldn't have everything. And so once I find one that I think is better, it goes up in the list, and then the other one drops off and I can sell it. So that's the thing is I have spent a ton of time on the real thing. You'll get a lot of people with the opinions on Hammond organ clones. They call it the Clone Wars, right? I mean, it's the best online inside organ player joke ever. It's the Clone Wars, and people have such, myself included, have had such strong opinions about why we picked this one over this one, or why this one isn't as good as this one. But it comes from the real thing, which is right here is my A100, right? So I'm looking over at it. You can't see it, but it's there. That's the gold standard, is this ridiculously complex tubes and wires instrument that was made in 1962, or started being made even earlier than that, before the B3s. The A100, the A series was out in the, early 50s and the 40s, I think. So, you know, here we are 50, 60 years later trying to replicate, just like a digital piano. We're trying to replicate something that was made in the, 16, 1700s, right? And we're trying to get as close as possible. And I think what we really try to achieve whenever we're playing a digital piano or a fake Rhodes or definitely a Hammond organ clone is suspension of disbelief. When I'm on the gig, when I'm not playing the real thing and I'm not playing through a Leslie and I'm playing through a speaker or a motion sound or a PA speaker, what clone is going to get me closest to forgetting that I'm playing a clone? And, or what digital piano is going to give me that Steinway feeling or that Yamaha feeling that you want from the real thing? As keyboard players, I might have lamented this last time. As keyboard players, I'm so jealous of a sax player or a guitar player, someone that actually gets to take the instrument that they shed on every day to a gig. I hate them. They walk in, they play the same instrument that's been in the practice room with them. I never get to do that, ever. Right?
Great point.
So we really have to find something that gets us as close to the real thing. And I have to hand it to Viscount, to Hammond Suzuki, to Crumar, to Nord, to Mag, to all of these companies that have dedicated time and resource to something that's a little bit of a niche instrument almost. It's popular. It's played on so many different but let's face it, they're devoting a ton of time and money to one instrument to try to get it as close as possible. So as organ players, and I'm filibustering here, I don't mean to, but as organ players, we need to be very grateful to these companies. Roland has had, Korg has made them. They've all really tried to make a dedicated organ. Yamaha with the YC series dipped their toes in it, and it's like, so we're very fortunate that we don't have to haul around an actual B3 to get in that ballpark anymore.
And Mitch, I know there are so many aspects of trying to replicate a B3, and obviously the Leslie's comes into part of it. And I know from some of your comments, I'm just interested in your perspective. A lot of our listeners and viewers out there will play clones. They may own some of the ventilator gear or whatever. And I know you've said essentially the inbuilt stuff with the Viscount Legend One is as good or better than what you can with adding the ventilator onto whatever you've got.
Absolutely. Yeah. I am one of the few people, I've never been a giant fan of the ventilator. It always kind of left me kind of wanting. I mean, at one point it was obviously the best simulator out there that you could get, off board, I guess. But I played a Crumar Mojo for a long time, and I thought their internal sim was pretty much just as good. And I used it, but I think the things that everyone's got a different set of priorities. If you talk to Pat Bianchi, he's going to tell you A, B, and C are the things for him that he wants out of a clone. And my A, B, and C, I might have a couple of the same things, but they might not be in the same order. And it's whatever those things for you get you there. And the thing obviously the Leslie simulation is very important. That's, and I'm not giving you these in any order, but say my top three are the Leslie simulation, how the keyboard feels, and the chorus vibrato. That to a bad chorus vibrato will just absolutely turn me off. I will not want to play. I won't want to hear it. There are records that I know that were made on clones, and I don't want to hear it. They don't sound good because the clone didn't have it was too warbly, or there was too much vibrato in the chorus, and it sounds like this, and I just can't stand it. And one of the reasons that I played a Crumar Mojo for so long, because out of the box, they nailed the VC 13 years ago. I mean, it was dead on out of the box, and that's what kept me with them for so long, is because of that. Now you can get close on some of the others. Now we fast forward to the Legend One. That's one of the things about it is I'll be honest with you. And like I told you before, I'm a Viscount endorsing artist, but I wasn't a huge fan of the original Legend because I didn't like the chorus. I thought it just wasn't quite right. And you could adjust it. You could get in there and play with it a little bit, but it wasn't that for me. Well, I tell you what, I gotta hand it to Viscount because, I mean, their leading endorser was Joey DeFrancesco, and Joey loved it. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't like the chorus vibrato, and he loved it. So you could have easily, if you were Viscount, you could have easily said, oh, you know what? Joey D likes it. Then it must be great. But they kept at it. And I tell you, somewhere in the last couple years, they kept at it. And boy, they absolutely, for me, just nailed it.
They certainly
So that's
have.
a big thing, is the chorus vibrato is a big thing. I said the action. The thing that you're never going to get on a clone is the action's never going to be right because they're all using a short length keyboard. And if you actually look at a real Hammond keyboard, it's got a very long key. So the fulcrum, is different. Well, with these FITAR key beds, or, even I think Hammond might make their own, but they're still working with they're not making extended keys. You're always going to be sort of struggling with that springy action compared to gently touching the key on a real Hammond, it goes down. But with a variety of springs and grommets, and some of these companies have really gotten close. Once again, Crumar, their feel is great. And now the Legend, I didn't like the feel of the original Legend, but with this and the Soul, they have really gotten a lot closer to what the real feel is. So, and then once again, Leslie Sim, the Leslie Sim in this is just outstanding. So they've really hit my 3 boxes there, with those things right off the top.
How do you experience some of the other features that I imagine organ players would be looking for, such as percussion, key click linkage, sorts of things?
The percussion is great. Percussion is this weird thing, it's a ping, but it's a wooden ping. The real percussion I have no idea why they even use that on a real organ. I don't know what it was for originally, but that's the sound, right? I mean, that's the thing that makes a B3, not a B2, is the percussion. And it's this mysterious thing that they do with a tube. And I don't know how it creates that woodeny ping thing. And a lot of the clones don't get that right, but the Legend, it feels right when I hear it. It's like, the things that happen while I'm in the middle of playing are where the story gets told. For me, it's as I'm playing. If I'm playing on a clone that maybe the vibrato's not really good, or maybe the chord, or maybe the percussion isn't right. Imagine the gif of, I think it's from The Hangover. It's Zach Galifianakis, and there's all these numbers and equations happening. Okay. That is sort of what happens in my brain when I'm playing. So if I'm playing on a real Hammond organ, and bear in mind, there are a lot of Hammond organs that sound like crap. Believe me, I've run into them on the road. Just because it's the real thing doesn't necessarily mean it's inspiring to play all the time. But say you're playing on a really good organ, and it's like, I've got all these avenues that I can go. It's like, oh, I could go here, or I could go here, or this made me think this. If I'm playing on an instrument that doesn't sound good or doesn't respond well, there's maybe this one, there's maybe this thing, there's way less. So a really good sounding instrument inspires more ideas. And that's what I've found. Even the first time I gigged with the Legend, I couldn't wait to get it out to play. And on the gig, it really felt like I had all these options that I have when I'm playing the real organ, you know? And the guys in the band, they were just like, what is that? I mean, they heard it because they play with me all the time when I've got different clones, and they also play with me when I'm playing the real organ. And they were just like, that thing sounds like the real thing. And I really felt like it inspired them to play the
Right.
real thing too, you know, the really go for it like we do when we're playing on the real stuff. So to answer your question, Paul, the percussion's great. The drawbar, the different levels of drawbar, it just feels right. It all mixes in nicely. The key click, one of the things that's different about the Legend One, the flagship of the Viscount stuff is the Soul. And the Soul's 2 manuals, you know, it's got all the bells and whistles, and the Soul is a little more editable in some of the deep editing you can do. So on the Legend One, the key click is basically a level amount. I have a volume. There's a key click knob right here on the front that you can adjust the key click. I think on the Soul, you can adjust some of the attack parameters. You can adjust a little bit of I think you can EQ it a bit. And I think there's also an attack frequency with the keys. So that's one of the reasons the Soul is the flagship. There's more you can edit. There's more things you can edit in the Leslie simulation on the Soul. The Leslie simulation on here includes their most recent sim, and you can control a lot of things. You can control where the mics are, but on the Soul, you can actually like visually move the mics around. Here you have set to, you know, rear at 60, rear far 60, side 180. You know, you can select different presets, but on the Soul, you can dial it. You can put one mic back there and one mic right up front if you wanted to do something like that. You can set that kind of stuff. So there's more editability within the Soul, but the Legend One really provides a lot of what you're looking for. I mean, if there are those of us organ players who are deep divers, you know, and will, you know, tweak until the cows come home. And there's guys that can make clones that I would consider maybe not as good. They can make them sound really, really good, you know? So it just depends on what you want to do. And I like that there's a lot of good presets in this. There's a ton of presets that are just not named directly after songs, but, you know, Purple Deep or whatever, you know, it'll be called something clever like that. So you know what they're going for. So they've spent a lot of time programming classic sounds here. But for me, it's like, give me the bass sound. I'm going to dial it in. And, it's got a crosstalk. There's a crosstalk that you can add in. There's a hum, which you can have they go to that level of realism. There's a hum that you can just have. It's just running in the background. You know, you can walk away from the keyboard and it's still making a sound out of the amp. You know, if that's what you want, it'll do that too, you know.
But I think what I'm hearing there, Mitch, is if I were to do something like what David did and just purchase one to use with my cover band or whatever out of the box, I'm going to get some really great, authentic.
You're ready to go. Yeah, you do that. You do a Pink Floyd thing, right?
Yeah, I do.
Well,
yes.
I got a feeling. I haven't gone through every preset name, but I got a feeling there's a couple in there that are probably named after Pink Floyd patches.
No doubt.
So, yeah.
And just on that, so Mitch, with the organ, you talk about the range of presets. I have no doubt you've dialed up your own sounds, as you said, and tweaked them and saved them. Do you want to give us a quick listen to what are some of your go-to organ sounds you love at the moment?
Well, yeah, I'll just, you know, and well, here, this type of chord is kind of like, it's the make or break for me. It's like if I play a chord like this on a clone, it's got to set. I've got the drive kind of cranked up, so you can hear how it breaks up. If I turn the drive all the way down, oops, it's a much cleaner sound. Now with the drive down, you can probably hear the crosstalk a little in there. You can turn. Now that's ridiculous amount. But if you hear that CV, now without the chorus vibrato on, so we'll go back to the original setting there. So without the CV on there, the straight organ sound with no chorus. But when you kick that on. The way that distortion breaks up is right.
Yeah.
This is probably the best drive I've heard on a clone ever, because a lot of times it gets sizzly. You know, a fake overdrive gets a little sizzly. This breaks up the way you expect it to when you're playing. It just has that, like, it just grinds in the back there. And they have different... One of the cool things, and you can't see the keyboard here, but they've really assembled this thing in a really smart way. So there's a dial for the chorus vibrato, just like there is on a Hammond organ. But if you push on it, it takes you right into the editable part where you can pick the chorus type. So they have 4 chorus types that are, I think, based on different organs and I think different vintages. So type A, and hopefully this will come across. Type A is not as strong, and it sounds like this. Type B, it's got a little more. Type C, it's probably not coming across too well, but in here, you can hear the high ends come out a little more like the chorus vibrato does on a real Hammond, because when you turn it off, it brings out, the chorus vibrato brings out a little more of those high ends, and there's 4 types in here. I think in the Soul you can get in and actually tweak down to the nth degree. On here you just get 4 presets, but they are so good. They're just, there's nothing I would change about them personally on a granular level. So yeah, so like I said, it's if you click on the Rotary simulator, it'll take you, if you hold it'll take you into the Rotary simulator where you can start changing where the mics are. I'm not sure if this will give you an idea of here. Let's try sorry guys, I'm just trying to figure out.
No, that's
okay. So like the mic setup, like right here, it's set at what's called rear 60 far. So it's in back. You know, but then let's go to side 180.
Yeah,
Totally different, right? Gives you totally different. And what that gives you the ability to do is whatever system you're playing through. Like right now I'm playing through a Motion Sound stereo keyboard, a KP12, right? Which is a great keyboard amp. But if I was playing through like a mono PA speaker, well, I can go in and kind of figure out what the right thing for that is, or if I was running direct into a board to record in a studio, I can set up what sounds good for that. You know, so you have a variety of setups which you can do for different situations. And it's got one of the tricks of recording a Hammond organ that you may or may not know that is that when Rudy Van Gelder recorded the Jimmy Smith stuff, not only did he have a Leslie, but he took a direct off of the organ.
Okay.
So you get a little extra click, you get a little extra bass. That's the real secret sauce to recording like a Hammond organ record. Like when we did my record, that's what we did. And you can then take that, it's a full range signal. So you can take it and kind of do whatever you want with it. Well, this allows you to dial in direct into your Leslie simulation. So you can get a little more click. You can get a little more of that direct sound through the same speakers. So, you know, you can really customize this to, you know, a very high degree.
That's amazing. And Mitch, I need to ask, obviously no single manual organ can hope to replicate a dual manual in some ways, but I know the Legend One, even from my little bit of playing, it's got some amazing options there. Tell us about how you're approaching that.
It has 4 what they call memory buttons that are right under the display, and these are not just for organ; they're for every single setting. You know, any of the other sounds you use, you can set up memories. But for like a jazz organ context, where like when you're playing jazz organ, you're not really usually doing a lot of drawbar pulling because you're busy. You're playing left hand. Like if you're playing in a band with a bass player, a lot of guys will do a lot of drawbar pulling and, you know, do that John Medeski kind of thing where they're playing the drawbars. that's that's a cool thing. That's not so the Jimmy Smith kind of Joey D kind of thing, because you're busy playing. There's too much going on. You don't have time to reach up. So a lot of times you use the presets, and you'll have them set up for, a typical jazz sound, and then you'll have also on the top your full organ, right? And you bounce between those on presets. So you're playing along, and all of a sudden you pop a preset to change that, right? So then on your bottom manual, you usually have a comping manual, right? You're playing bass and comping with like 838 is usually, right? Well, so with these, since I'm playing a single manual, I have to be able to go between like a solo sound on top and then be able to comp behind somebody. And that's what these memory spots are perfect for. So say we're playing a tune and we play the head, we get to the end, and it's a guitar solo. I'm immediately to that because I just pop that preset, So then when I go to my solo, then I go back to the solo setting. I can't comp while I'm soloing, which is you ba-ba-do that and then comp a little bit and then play. You lose that on a single manual, but everything's a sacrifice. Yeah, this thing sounds so good, and I love playing it so much. I'm like, you know what? I'll deal with it. And then of course, so on the third set, I've got the full out organ, but then you can do things like the classic thing that Joey D or Jimmy Smith would do. They would hold the big chord and then drop down the manual. Well, I can do that with the I can imitate that a little bit. I've got a video up. I have a YouTube short where I'm doing that on a ballad. And I tell you what, if I had my eyes closed, I would think that I had just done that. Even though I knew what I was doing, it sounded good. And I'm not bragging about my technique. I'm just saying I was able to manipulate this in a way to get that sound. It's got 2 sets of drawbars and a set of pedal drawbars. So a lot of people don't like the single manual clones because they often have 1 set of drawbars. Well, this one's got 2, so you can set it up. They really, and we're not even talking about the other sounds yet. I don't know if we'll have time for that or not.
Yeah, we will.
But they've really gone about this in a smart way, because the drawbars can also be used for the synth parameters, unlike some of the synthesizers. So if I'm playing a synth pad, I can do filter cutoff, I can do resonant and attack, decay, and release, all of your typical, your bread and butter synth parameters with the drawbars. It was really brilliantly assembled.
And that's probably a good segue, Mitch, because I do want to talk about the other sound. So just, as I said, I've only played with it for half an hour, but the reason I bought the Legend One is I currently use a Modi X7 as my main board. I currently use a virtual, an Arturia MIDI controller as my top board. I'm so sick of not having a decent organ sound, and my current band has probably 10 songs now that require a really decent organ sound. So I threw out on the Legend One based on the videos, but just from playing, it's got, I would argue, and I've stupidly have owned the Electro 5D and the YC 61 and sold them both. This is by far and away the best set of synth sounds I've heard on an organ clone.
They're really good. Yeah, there's not a ton of them. It's not. But I kind of have a lot of faith in Viscount in their constant they update a lot, and they have made a lot of stuff backward compatible to some of their older. I don't think they can go backward to the original Legends with some of the stuff that's in the Soul and the Legend now, but I know that they did when they did some new chorus vibrato changes to the Soul. They made them available. They were able to put them in the original Legends, but I know that from talking to them, there are plans for updates to this. This is an investment keyboard, I think. They've proven that they're always moving forward with this stuff. So I feel that any of the stuff that I'm not, 100% in love with, I got a feeling that'll change over time.
Yeah, agree. And you're right, there aren't a massive amount, but the ones that are there, so there's just a really good stable of pads. There's a really good stable of synth leads.
It's just really... Yeah, it's got all, And this is a good, let's see, synth. We're on, okay, so here's our pad. Well, I can change the filter cutoffs and all that. Let's not, oh wait, I didn't turn it on. I'm just messing with the resonance and the cutoffs and, so you can really dial into stuff like you would live, just to adjust it the way you want.
Exactly. And the other thing I want to call out to listeners and viewers that use virtual rigs, I've already started setting mine up with the Viscount One and bringing in sounds from main stage. Like any decent keyboard nowadays, the MIDI implementation is excellent. It works really well. I'm actually about to try and integrate it with Gig Performer as well, which should be even easier. So, yeah, can't recommend that side of it as well. And Mitch, do you use that side of the Viscount much live? I know it's predominantly organ, but you do use it a bit, yeah.
Yes, I'm in an ensemble that does a lot of like live funk improv, total improv, where I'm the bass player too, and I play a lot of synth stuff. So I have set up some presets where it's not only does it have it's got great synth basses. I don't know if you can hear. It's all have it set up with strings on top. So I'm playing all the bass parts here and playing the synth. It's got some really cool leads in it. They're named like Mr. Jan and Mr. Duke, so they definitely like, here's Mr. That's the Jan Hammer patch, the Duke, George Duke. You have to do your eyebrows when you do that kind of stuff too, so I can't not do that, so it's got, it has a handful of each kind of sound you're looking for. And I got a feeling over time that'll increase, but then you can edit them and save them the way you want. If your pad doesn't have as much resonance or you want it to have a longer decay, you can set that and then save it that way. And then so you really do have, quite a lot of stuff to, I can take that George Duke sound and change the resonance a little, and make it my own thing a little more, So it's such a well thought out keyboard. I'm not using, probably a third of what it's built for just because I'm playing organ so much, right? But it's got, got nice. That's your Richard T. And it responds nicely too for being a non-weighted keyboard. It's got velocity levels. You can set velocity curves and that kind of thing. So it's really kind of built for that to so you can dial it into the way it's going to respond to your playing.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And thank you for showing one of the EPs off too. I mean, I know you mentioned at the start that each one has its strengths, and look, I love the electric, but certainly the pianos are, for what I need in a cover band, extremely strong, and I'd argue better than the Made X7s.
And I will mention this too, that I have not played the 73 key version. This is the 61.
Yes.
And I got the 61 because I can't play organ on a 73. It's my feng shui is off, right? Yeah. I will not do. I can't do it. And one thing that Viscount did is, and I haven't played the 73, but the actions, I guess, are slightly different because they geared the 73 to be a little more towards, it's not weighted, but it's a little different action that's more keyboard. And all the reports that I've read on all the forums and anyone that has one and that has played them ad nam, they said they can still easily play organ on the 73. So that's great. I went for the 61 because it's designed for organ. The action's a little more is more organy. That's what I want. That's what I'm shooting for. And so I will sacrifice for the other sounds so the organ plays the way I want.
Mitch, what percentage of the time are you taking this one out and using it versus maybe having something else provided?
Once I got this, I haven't taken any other clone out. This is
wow.
I've actually sold a couple since I got this. I was like, okay, this is my new Huckleberry.
I'm done.
This is it. This is the one. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I would eventually like to get a Soul because to have the 2 keyboards, but for now, I mean,
Yeah.
I just bought a car, guys. I'm not, music's being good to me, but it's like there's, I have a budget, but
That's
eventually
right.
I think I would like a Soul. But I tell you, guys, this is just so easy. I'll take this on a plane. I think this is maybe the first clone that I've had that I thought, okay, I'm going to get a road case. And if I'm going to go to a gig somewhere and I don't know what's going on for backline, I'm going to throw this in a road case and check it and actually take it. I've never taken a keyboard on the road like that. I always just kind of deal with backline. But, before he passed away, Joey D had made a Facebook post. It was a little controversial. He said, there's no reason to be playing the real thing anymore, because, and I get his perspective was, I mean, that guy toured the world a million times over playing all the backline and God knows what kind of crap he ran into, in far flung places, oh yeah, we have an organ and God knows what it is. Right. And I think he was so happy to have an instrument that he knew was going to sound the same every night. And I totally get that. I don't agree that, I mean, I feel like if you're recording, if you're in the studio, man, and the real thing's there, that's the real thing. And I always wanted to hear Joey on the real thing because that's the real thing. But man, I get it. When you could actually go somewhere and know this thing's going to sound the same and it's going to sound good no matter what amplification system they provide me with. All I got to do is I can pack a expression pedal and maybe not. Oh, one of the cool features, by the way, speaking of pedals, is they have what's called the thud built into this. And let me get my setting up here. And I don't have it. You have to set it in the
like
right.
the foot pedal thud?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So it's a tap. So as you guys know, probably, when you're playing jazz organ, you have pedal board too. And usually you're not playing each one. Like on a ballad, you might be playing each one, or on a medium tempo, you can tap each pedal. But a lot of times you're just tapping one pedal because that gives you what they call the thud. And it's really like the pluck of a string. So if I'm playing a bass line here with just my left hand, right? It sounds good, right? But if you're tapping a pedal at the same time,
yeah, wow.
Well, so they set it up so you can use a sustain pedal to tap, and you can pick whatever pedal. Like, I think every organ player might have a different tap pedal. I use a B flat. I think Pat Bianchi uses a B. I think Brian Charette might use an A. But it allows you to just get that little thump in there. And the Soul has a setting that I hope makes it to this. Because right now, all I can do is choose one pedal and tap it. Now, if I hold down, and the cool thing is if I hold down on the pedal, it'll play that pedal tone, but it'll only play that one that I'm able to choose. On the Soul, they just added a thing where it will play whatever the lowest note is. So if I'm playing F in my left hand, and I play the sustain pedal, it'll play the pedal. See, like right now, it's playing the B flat.
That's right.
Now, so they call it like leftmost or whatever. I really want that on this, and I imagine they'll probably put it in this because then you could almost do a gig without pedals because you could still have a pedal tone long when you needed it. But that kind of stuff, that kind of like, they really went to organ players. They went to Joey D. They went to Pat Bianchi. They went to people who really know the organ and say, what do you want in this? They have there's some amazing Italian organ players. Francesco De Lo, he's one of the guys who has been, a part of the development of making this instrument as full of whatever you'd want as it can be.
Exactly.
I gotta give it, and like I said earlier, I gotta give it to Crumar. I gotta give it to Karsten, who created the HX3 board. The module that's used in the Mag and in the UHL. That's an amazing clone too. The amount of time and just getting the amazing idiosyncrasies of this insane instrument and all the the crosstalk. This has key compression. So one of the things about a Hammond organ is if you play a lot of notes, it actually compresses them so they're not so I don't know how it works or any of that, but they built that into this too. So if you're playing a real balls out sound, it's not just cutting your head off because it actually compresses, like, because the real thing does that. So they built that in, and you can adjust that, so there's so much that they've put into this to just make it as useful as it possibly can be to someone like myself and a variety of other organ players.
Absolutely. Extremely well put, Mitch. And I think it's great that the bar just continues to be raised. And as you mentioned, all the other companies. I mean, we had Scott May from Hammond on recently. I mean, they're doing amazing stuff. So everyone's doing amazing stuff and keeping this alive, which is what counts.
And here's the thing. Everybody has a different idea of what the Hammond organs should sound like. Does it sound like the sound that Rick Wakeman used on Roundabout? Yes. Does it sound like what Keith Emerson used on Tarkus? Yes. Does it sound like what Jimmy Smith played on The Sermon? Yes. Does it sound like what Larry Goldings plays? Yes. It's all of those things. They're all different. That's why a lot of the clones have different models. Like there's 5 or 6 different organs in here. There's a C3, there's 2 different B3s from different vintages. There's an A100, there's a BC where the fold back goes all the way down. So they have to give, the Crumar has 24 of them. I mean, so that's just because they're all different. And I think that's one of the real hard things is everyone's got a different idea. So then they go, oh, I like the Nord because it does this. Well, okay, because it sounds like the sound in your head when you think of the organ. For me, it's the Joey D, it's the Chester Thompson from Tower of Power sound. That's, if you can give me those sounds, man, I'll play your instrument. It's like, that's what it is.
No, exactly right. No, extremely well put. Look, I can't thank you enough, Mitch, for running us through it because, as I said, I certainly haven't had enough time, let alone the skill you bring to it. And I feel like we've even done a mini clone wheel shootout because you've mentioned basically all the key organs, which is amazing as well. So, yeah, look, I apologise we don't have more time, but can't thank you enough for running us through it like that.
I would just babble on longer, so,
No, definitely not babble. And there we have it. Paul, as we talked about in the introduction, I mean, Mitch's passion is obvious from the get-go.
Yeah, it certainly is. He said so himself. He's a passionate guy, and that's why I love listening to him because he really has a care factor. And although, as he disclosed, yes, he is an endorsed artist by Viscount, his opinions, and they're coming from the heart. And I just love hearing him talk about playing organ, and every time I listen to him, I just think about how much nuance there is to that instrument.
Exactly. And there is a lot of nuance. And as a non-endorsed Viscount artist, and nor should I be endorsed for the level of my artistry. But look, from what I've played around with the I am sold on it. I think it's an amazing board, and I'm super excited to dig deeper into it. And as I said in I'm looking at actually updating my live rig and moving off main stage to gig performer. And for those that listen to the David Jamison interview, or if you haven't, get on it. If you're interested in gig performer, he sort of turned around my perception on how gig performer's framed. Because I was really struggling with that, and I've spent probably 20 minutes in gig performer and was able to so easily set up a basic setup for a song. I'm super impressed with it, so I'm excited to dive into that. But yeah, the Legend One, its MIDI implementation is no better than anyone else's, but I just, I won't bore people to but there are other keyboards where I've really struggled to find how do I get main stage or gig performer to switch internal things. No issue at all. But there are lots of other keyboards that's not an issue either. But
I think too, the thing that sort of came out towards the end of that chat there, David, is what seems to be really good about this instrument is you can be an organ player requiring quite some depth and complexity and subtlety, and clearly someone like Mitch is very, very satisfied with what it delivers in that regard. But then you could also be someone who might be using it just to get killer organ sounds for your cover band or what have you, and it's going to do that job really well too. And as Mitch said, there's some presets that are already in there that will just help you get straight into some of those classic iconic rock sounds that we all know from the Hammond through the 60s and 70s and 80s. So I think that's an exciting thing, and obviously it's got the cool other stuff too, the electric pianos, acoustic pianos, synthesizers. like some of the other keyboards that we know and love. So I think it was really worth exploring that, and it certainly intrigued me, no doubt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, it's inspired me to, whenever I find some time in the next couple of years, I've always wanted to have proper organ lessons. So I would love to be able to play, say, 10% as good as what Mitch Towne does. And I'll need lessons to be able to do that. And this is the sort of board, albeit not a dual manual. In an ideal world, I would have a B3, but as you know, Paul, in Australia, there ain't that many of them.
Well, I was just thinking, I think Mitch has more in his house than we have in our country.
That's right. Yeah, sadly. So, but no, look, it was a great chat with Mitch, and I hugely appreciate his time taking it. And also thank you to all of you out there for your time as always. We've certainly got lots of great shows to come up as well. And a big shout out to our gold and silver supporters, the lovely Tammy Catcher from Tammy's Musical Stew. Thank you as always, Tammy. The brilliant musicplayer.com forums, Dave Bryce and the team there, go-to place to discuss keyboards, particularly if you like I do, the older style forum format. You know, it's so much more civilized than social media, but that's just me. Or not just me, because there's lots of people on musicplayer.com forums. The lovely Dewey Evans from the sunny land of Wales. Thank you, Dewey, as always, for your support. And last but definitely not least, Mr. Mike Wilcox from Midnight Mastering. Paul and I both talked about how we've used Mike for projects, and we're both very happy customers. And
Yes.
if you want your work mixed and mastered in a masterful way, then Midnight Mastering is the way to go. Thank you, Paul, as always. We'll be chatting very soon, and we're seeing each other face-to-face in a couple of months, which is very exciting.
I couldn't be more excited about that. Our band's playing together. We're going to have to do some kind of, I don't know what episode, no one's going to care, because we're just a couple of blokes having a bit of fun. But I think we just have to be self-indulgent, don't we? And just have an episode based around us seeing each other and our bands having a fun night.
Exactly. No, looking forward to it. So again, thank you all out there, and until we see you next time, keep on playing.